You ever had someone look you dead in the eye and decide in 5 seconds that you don't belong? Yeah, that happened to me. A black woman in a world that often sees me as a question mark before I even speak. That IT started with the jarring screech of a chair on marble and the branch manager pointing right at me, like I just robbed the place. Ma'am, empty your pockets and step away from my desk right now. His voice cut across the whole lobby. People stopped mid-sentence, heads turned, and you could feel the air change, growing thick and tense. I was just sitting there, jeans, a plain hoodie, nothing fancy, no makeup, no jewelry. My hands were resting on my leather portfolio. The look on his face said everything. To him, I was a problem before I even opened my mouth. People like you don't walk into Axiom Trust and Capital asking for millions, he said, grabbing his hand sanitizer like I was contagious, rubbing it in slow, deliberate circles while keeping eye contact. I could feel everyone in the lobby watching, waiting to see what I would do. He leaned back in his chair, voice loud enough for the tellers to hear. Let me guess. You're here about that loan application, $2.5 million. Do you have any idea what kind of collateral that takes? He chuckled, like he already knew the punchline. My phone buzzed, a name on the screen that could have ended this whole circus in seconds, but I declined the call. I wanted to see just how far this guy was willing to go. A teenage girl by the ATM had her phone up, streaming everything live. Her viewer count was ticking like a slot machine. Behind the glass, one of the tellers, Serena, was watching with this look like she wanted to help, but knew she'd get fired if she did. The manager, his nameplate read Marcus Finch, flipped open my application and scoffed. Community Advancement Initiative for Minority-Owned Businesses. This isn't a charity drive, Miss Thorne. We deal in reality here, not fairy tales. An older lady in pearls, clearly a long-time customer, glanced at me, then back at him, frowning. Sir, I said quietly, maybe we can talk in private. Oh no, Marcus smirked. Transparency is important in banking. Everyone should know how these situations get handled. He turned to his assistant and muttered loud enough for half the room to hear. They watch too much TV and think success just happens. That was the moment I knew exactly what game he was playing. He stood up, towering over me, and said, I think we should involve the authorities. We've had people trying scams lately, and this looks familiar. Phones went up all around the lobby. Serena's hands were trembling now. I kept my tone even. Are you sure that's your best option? He laughed. Ma'am, I've been doing this for 20 years. I know exactly what I'm dealing with. Then, right there in front of everyone, he called 911. Suspicious individual, possible financial fraud, refuses to leave, he said, like he was reading from script. The older woman in pearls stood up. Mr. Finch, I've been a customer here for 40 years. Is this really necessary? She's just sitting at your desk. Mrs. Albright, please. We have protocols to protect legitimate customers, he said, smiling that fake polite smile that I set my portfolio on his desk and said, Marcus, you haven't even looked at my documentation. I've seen enough, he replied. Then review it. He hesitated. With all those cameras on him, he knew refusing would look bad. So he sighed, flipped it open, and that's when the colors started draining from his face. Inside was my federal employment verification from the U.S. Treasury, statements showing $4.5 million in liquid assets, AAA business credit ratings, and letters from 2 Federal Reserve presidents and a U.S. senator. His hands were shaking as he turned each page. Before he could speak, 2 police officers walked in. We got a call about possible fraud, one asked, scanning the room. Yes, officer. Marcus jumped in. This individual submitted questionable documents and became uncooperative. The younger cop frowned. She wanted her loan reviewed. That's why you called us. I stood up, reached into my portfolio, and pulled out my credential wallet. Officers, Dr. Lena Thorne, Senior Compliance Officer, Federal Reserve Bank of Chicago. The whole place went dead quiet. The older officer's eyes narrowed as he examined the badge, checking the hologram seals. All real. I'm here conducting an unannounced compliance investigation into discrimination complaints at this branch, I said calmly. Mr. Finch has been under federal observation for 42 minutes. The live stream's viewer count shot past 16,000. Marcus looked like he might pass out, and then the front doors opened again. In walked a tall black man in a sharp suit, moving like he owned the room. Dr. Thorne, Agent Carter, FBI Financial Crimes Division. He gave me a crisp salute in front of every camera in the room. Marcus's jaw dropped. Agent Carter turned to him. Sir, filing a false report on a federal officer is a felony. Up to 5 years in prison. Marcus stammered something about not knowing. I didn't let him finish. Federal investigators don't announce themselves during active audits, I said. It defeats the purpose of documenting authentic behavior. 15 minutes later, the sound of helicopter blades filled the parking lot. The bank's president, Elias Vance, walked in with lawyers on both sides. His first move was to try to get me into a private conference room. I refused. This started in public. It ends in public. I laid it all out. Immediate termination and permanent industry bans for anyone involved in discriminatory practices. A $5 million community development fund for minority business loans. Mandatory quarterly bias training monitored by the feds. Real-time discrimination monitoring software. Independent public audits. And a full review of every loan denial from the past 2 years with compensation for wrongful rejections. Vance's jaw tightened, but he knew there was no choice. Cameras were rolling, the live stream still climbing. He agreed to every term. Serena, I said, turning toward the teller behind the glass. You're now the branch manager. Effective immediately. She froze for a second, then nodded, eyes shining. 3 months later, that branch was unrecognizable. The $5 million fund had already launched dozens of minority-owned businesses. Customer satisfaction had tripled. Serena was running the place with a diverse management team that actually reflected the community. A year later, those reforms had spread statewide. Congressional hearings cited what they called the Thorne Protocol as a model for eliminating discrimination in banking. Other banks were scrambling to adopt similar changes before federal investigators like me showed up at their door. As for Marcus, last I heard he was selling door-to-door insurance for a third of his old salary. Yeah, that happened. That day wasn't about me getting a loan. It was about a man deciding I didn't belong before I even said a word and showing him in front of the world just how wrong he was. And here's the truth. You don't need a badge to hold people accountable. You can document. You can speak up. You can refuse to just sit there when someone crosses the line. So, let me ask you, if you were in that bank, if you saw that going down, what would you have done? And have you ever been in a moment where you proved someone dead wrong about you?